Hello and welcome to the Grandmaster division of the International Championship. For the first time since over a year, I am finally playing in the highest division, in the Grandmaster division, again in the International Championship. I'm very happy that I finally made it back, and of course, with that, I also want to show some of the games of the season with you. I definitely won't be able to show all of the games because the next stage of the World Championship is also already ongoing, which I want to cover, but I will show some of those games. And as you can see, we have a very strong and interesting opposition. Um, of course, a group in the International Championship consists of 7 players, and the lowest rated player out of those 7 is Ipogi, who's in the 16th position in the click rating. So all of the players in the group are very, very strong, and it will be very tough to get some good results against such a strong opposition. I will very quickly introduce the opponents to you, not as extensively as I usually do. But just very quickly, we have Grotz, who is the winner of the last season of the International Championship, where he managed to win for the first time. And as you can see, he is at the moment at the 2nd position in the clicker rating, which shows that he has just pulled off some very consistently very strong results across all of the tournaments. Also managed to win the team championship in the last edition of that tournament together with Binky. Then we have Genghisip, who is an old veteran who has already won the International Championship multiple times. Made it to the finals of the World Championship 2023. And yeah, just as one of the top players, as we can see in his 3rd position in the click rating, is also known sometimes of going for a bit of a military heavy play. Or having such a play style. I'm at the 7th position at the clicker rating at the moment, and we have Arne at the 10th position, who already played in the Grandmasters division the season before, has definitely proven himself now on a very high level. In the last season, I think had a very solid amount of points, and I think he finished 4th or 5th, but I think 4th in the last season. We have MWI, who also played in the Grandmaster division already in the season before, managed to finish at the 3rd position, so won a bronze medal, and also has shown that he can compete at the very highest level. We have funestus at the 14th position in the click rating, who I think has now already played multiple seasons in the Grandmaster division of the International Championship. I think isn't competing in that many other tournaments. Same as for Genghisip. Genghisip at the moment, I think, also mainly participates in the International Championship, doesn't play in the currently ongoing World Championship. But in that tournament that they are participating, they are really showing some great results. And then we have Ipogi, who is of course the player of the last year, the year 2025, and also managed to finish 3rd in the last year's World Championship, as well as playing in the Grandmaster division and as well International Intermezzo Championship. He and I are the players who ranked up from Master in the last season, and Alright, with that quick introduction, we will take a look at the first game that I want to show from the season, and it will be a 4-player game against Genghisip, Arne, and funestus. And now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the last position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have a little bit of science energy, but not that much. We have Einstein, Marie Curie, there's no space flight, but at least the internet, but no Manhattan Project. We have Fleming and Chaplin together with the Hollywood and potentially the internet, also Gandhi to hide behind, Churchill for the military. We have no Pierre, but Mandela is there. There's also the Red Cross. In H2, maybe not the strongest wonders, apart of course from the Ocean Liner Service, who is there, but no Maria Theresa. We have Newton as a strong science leader as well as Nobel. We have Gaudi, Shakespeare, and Darwin for a bit of cultural production. James Watt can be quite strong. And then we have James Cook, but there's no Suez Canal in the game. As you maybe noticed, there is not a single military action leader in H2 and H1, only Caesar is there in HA. We have Nostradamus and Genghis Khan as well as Barbarossa to help with the strength in H1. We have Michelangelo together with some interesting wonders, maybe not the most interesting ones in H2, but could still be an interesting leader. We have Columbus as a nice transitional leader, but without a Suez Canal. And then also Isabella as maybe not so great leader without the biggest colonization payoff. Then Genghisip is playing in first position, and he doesn't have the greatest choices, can only take an HA yellow card and will go with the Urban Growth, which I think makes sense. Arne will then just go for Aristotle. He could have taken 2 yellow cards, but that's also not that great, so just committing to a very solid leader sounds like a good decision. Funestus actually also just goes for leader, is willing to grab Confucius for 3 civil actions, could have also gone for Cleo but as a yellow card, but Confucius is the better leader and it is probably a fine decision to just take him here. That means that I can potentially take a bunch of cards. I could even theoretically just take all 4 HA yellow cards, but those are really not the greatest HA yellow cards with patriotism and cultural heritage, so I don't think that would be a good idea, but it would be a fun play. But I can take, for example, Cleopatra, Colossus with 2 yellow cards, or the Hanging Gardens with 1 yellow card. And I don't think like the Hanging Gardens enough to take them at the cost of missing out on the yellow card, so I think it's mainly a decision between Cleopatra and Colossus. As we have seen, there is not really a lot of colonization payoff. There's maybe Columbus who synergizes nicely with the Colossus. Maybe you could go for a bit of a strength push with Barbarossa. It's generally still a solid wonder. But here I actually went with Cleopatra. Of course, I don't know yet which wonder I will be getting, and all of the opponents before me haven't committed to a wonder yet. But as you can see, when I take Cleopatra and then the Urban Growth plus the Frugality, so 2 yellow cards, which I think is quite a nice first pick, 2 yellows plus a leader, there will be a lot of new cards revealed. And with that, I was just hoping that it will be quite likely that some new wonders will be revealed. And I have the Urban Growth, meaning at the first turn with Cleopatra, I will be able to build a second lab at the discount, meaning at the turn after, I have enough resources to build a step of all of those wonders, apart from the Colossus, but that one will be discarded anyway. And the mine at turn 3, so I will be able to use Cleo's bonus nicely and get the mine going without, no, I don't need to delay that mine or anything. Of course, only if I get one of those wonders, but I was hoping that it should be quite likely, and with that I was willing to commit to Cleopatra here. Now it's Genghisip's turn. He now doesn't have a leader to choose from, so his first turns have been a bit awkward. Just he could only take a yellow card, now he can't go for a leader. He uses that to actually pay an additional civil action for the Stonehenge, as after taking the wonder he can just build something and increase his population anyway. It's interesting that he goes for the Stonehenge here, because there would have been also the Roman roads, which I think is quite strong in 4-player games, but Genghisip apparently, at least in this specific situation, values the Stonehenge a bit more highly than the Roman roads. And also it's interesting that despite going for the Stonehenge, he actually builds the second lab first, with having the additional signs from the Stonehenge. I think sometimes it can be worthwhile to rather prioritize getting a bit more resources going, but Genghisip wants to go all in on science, and will be able to develop quite a bunch of technologies with that setup. Arne goes for Aristotle, builds a mine, and just goes for the Colossus, isn't willing to overpay on the Roman roads, which I think also doesn't work that nicely with Aristotle. Funestus will go for Confucius, builds a mine, takes the Roman roads. I think a very solid start for him. Confucius plus Roman roads, a very strong leader and a very strong wonder. Now it's my turn. I will start by electing Cleopatra. There have been actually some interesting cards revealed. Nostradamus, I think, can be quite a strong leader. Knights is certainly a card that you sometimes can take for 2 civil actions in a 4-player game. But the problem is, I want to elect Cleo, I want to build my second lab, and I want to take a wonder so that I can also use Cleo's resources in the upcoming turns, and that requires 3 civil actions. So while I thought about a little bit of taking maybe one of those 2 cards, I think I rather just want to play it efficiently here, use Cleo, take a wonder, and then hopefully I will get other interesting cards maybe at the following turn. The question is then, of course, which wonder do I want to take? Do I want to go for the Hanging Gardens and the Colosseum? I think, for example, in a 2-player game, I like the Hanging Gardens quite a bit more than the Colosseum actually, but the 4-player games, I think, is the player count where maybe the Colosseum is at its best. There are not that many additional military actions available on cards per player. For example, 2 commons, 2 monarchies, but that's the same amount as in 3-player games, but we have an additional player. And as you might remember from the Leaders and Wonders overview, there's actually no leader in H1 and H2 that gives additional military action. We have Barbarossa for a bit of synergy, maybe Columbus for a little bit of synergy. Because of the additional draws. We have St. Peter's Basilica, who can double the 1 happy phase with the Colosseum, which I think is quite nice. Nostradamus, who also works nicely with an additional military action, likely will be taken away, but I just felt like that could be a strong game for the Colosseum. So I go for the Colosseum. I have a combination of a leader and a wonder that I maybe don't go for as often. Both Clio and Colosseum I didn't really take that often last year. I draw the Phalanx tactic and the uncertain borders with my first draw. Genghisip is willing to go for Nostradamus actually as a first leader. I guess both Caesar and Homer maybe not that ideal. Homer with having already an additional happy phase and with having that many steps maybe a bit tricky to pull off, and so Genghisip just commits into an H1 leader directly. Arne uses Aristotle nicely, can take 2 technologies for 1 civil action each. The cartography can synergize quite nicely with the Colossus, giving Arne that big of a colonization force that he can maybe win any colonies that he seeds quite cheaply. Funestus starts seeding and opens the development of agriculture. Interestingly, Genghisip, also that I forgot to mention that, he didn't build his 3rd mine with the last civil action, instead took the engineering genius, but I guess he predicted that at least Funestus will seed, maybe he as Nostradamus wants to seed as well, so maybe in this situation he valued it quite highly to have a free population and was willing to take the engineering genius, despite delaying the mine by that and having a 4 steps wonder. Funestus increases his population, takes the swordsman, builds the first 2 steps of the Rome roads, is willing to delay the 2nd lab, has some additional science production from Confucius. Now it is my turn. I don't want to push the uncertain borders. I don't know yet if I will get a copy of knights and how nicely I will be prepared for strength. This turn, thanks to the urban growth that I had from the beginning, I can now build my 3rd mine, as well as building the first step of the Colosseum, making use out of Cleo's resources. That leaves me with 2 civil actions left, and I could consider just taking a breakthrough for 2 civil actions, which is a strong card. Additional science, especially with me having neither a wonder nor a leader that gives additional science, could be quite valuable. I also could increase my population and take a card for 1 civil action. If maybe there would be Bach in the game or Marlene, I might consider the drama a bit more, but without them I think I don't want to spend a civil action on the drama. But there are 2 yellow cards that I could maybe take for a civil action cheaper than a breakthrough, but I could also just play the frugality 2 times and then increase my population 2 times. All of those lines I think would be reasonable. At the end I actually decided to increase my population and take the frugality. So I pass on the breakthrough, I actually go into consumption for that, but I have a free population, and as said, probably Genghisip with having Nostradamus wants to see it, Funestus wants to see it, so we have to expect some seeding, and with that I think it's a bit more valuable to have a free population, and I could just increase my population additional time, but I think getting 2 food for civil action is not that bad of a deal. It allows me to just increase my population twice at the next turn in case I don't have the best options on the card row to take some cards. And generally just having a bit more population can be helpful, maybe allows me to not be the weakest and be better prepared for the military. So at the end I was willing to spend the 1 civil action to take the frugality, but I didn't want to be too behind on civil actions and wasn't willing to take the breakthrough, but that also would have been a reasonable line. So I do think there are different options that are quite close to each other here, but the frugality at the end felt best to me. I draw 2 cards, the Knowledge of the Ancients as well as the Pestilence. Genghisip seeds, opens the development of planning. There are some strong options with the development of crafts, religion and settlement. Interestingly, Genghisip goes for the development of settlement, but it is of course quite a strong development, is willing to miss out on the free religion for that. He takes the monarchy and builds the 3rd mine, as well as increases in his population, so he has now a card that he can invest the additional signs of the Stonehenge into. Arne seeds, the development of civil life has been revealed. He actually is willing to take Columbus for 2 civil actions. Maybe he has already a strong colony drawn, but even without that I think it could be a reasonable pick, because with that he can just keep Aristotle for quite some time, maybe get quite a bunch of science out of him, and then use Columbus as a nice transitional leader, and together with the Colossus he has the chance to maybe hit the jackpot and draw a very early H2 colony. He is willing to miss out on some strong yellow cards for that, so maybe misses out on a bit of science, but I guess he gets some science with Aristotle. Funestus seeds and opens the development of crafts. So now there actually has a lot of events to be evaluated. First, the development of planning with some options, then the development of civil life, which of course also offers different options, and the development of markets where we have to choose whether to take food or resources. So quite some things to decide. Funestus will take the development of religion, so the free temple. Arne took this as well, uses the development of civil life to build his second lab, and then gains 2 resources out of the development of markets. He finishes the Rome roads this turn, takes Isabella and elects her, takes the breakthrough, doesn't go into consumption yet. Now that the development of religion is out, it's maybe not too important to have a free population any longer. Now it is my turn. I actually decide to push the pestilence into the deck, as with the frugality and thanks to having the information that the pestilence is coming, I will actually also, same as Genghisip, choose to take the development of settlement over the development of religion. And with all of that, I actually have quite a bunch of population and thought that the pestilence might do a bit of more damage to my opponents than to me, and with that I was willing to push, even though at the moment I'm not really that nicely prepared for potential strength events. This turn I will finish the Colosseum, that gets me out of corruption. I, as said, took the development of settlement from the development of planning, increased my population with the development of civil life, and then took additional resources from the development of markets. As I already have a bunch of free population and a frugality, so it felt overkill to also take now food from the development of markets, even though there is of course the pestilence coming. After finishing the Colosseum, I have 2 civil actions left, and I do think there are some different options here. First of all, I considered just taking the Amici Castle here, which I value quite a bit more highly recently again, maybe especially in 4-player games. I think in the late game it's just quite strong to have the Amici Castle, and with that make it a lot harder, or make you a lot less unattractive as a war target. And so I thought about just taking Amici Castle here, allows me to spend even more resources with Cleopatra. The problem is there are also quite some strong yellow cards to take. There's an Engineering Genius for 1 civil action, which offers 3 resources for 1 civil action, which is quite a nice deal. The Cultural Heritage for a bit of additional science is also not bad to have, so I considered those cards, but I also considered Leonardo. At some point I will need a replacement for Cleopatra. And there are actually 2 copies of Alchemy coming down the road. There might be a chance that I can get one of those at the next turn and then transition into Leonardo with quite some strong science income. The problem is, those alchemies could also be interesting for my opponents. It's certainly possible that maybe Arne and Funestus will both go into alchemy. They both still need to upgrade something. There's no iron on the row. Maybe they will do something different, but if I go for Leonardo, they are maybe especially incentivized to go for one of those alchemies, and then maybe could take them away, and I felt it could be a bit awkward. And if I don't go for Leonardo, the alchemies are still quite nice for me, and who knows, maybe I have a bit of a higher chance than to get one of those and actually use Cleo's resource if I don't go for the Amici Castle. And I do think just going for the Amici Castle could be a very fine line, but I also felt like the other wonders that I could get are quite fine. The Forbidden City, which might be taken away, but if I get it, could be quite a strong wonder. Getting the 5th civil action, getting the Ignored Unhappy Workers, which will be relevant as soon as I lose the 2 yellow tokens to the end of the age. Or the St. Peter's Basilica, doubling the happy face from the Colosseum and getting a bit of culture income going. Or also Universitas, of course, can be quite a nice wonder. So at the end, I rather wanted to take the Engineering Genius here and also the Cultural Heritage, getting 2 valuable yellow cards, especially the Engineering Genius, hoping that maybe I can either get a wonder like Forbidden City or maybe a copy of Alchemy at the next turn, so that I can use Cleo's resources at the next turns. So that's of course a bit of a downside of not going for the Amici Castle here, but it just felt a bit bad just passing on that Engineering Genius. And now I also pass now on Leonardo, but all of my opponents have already taken a leader, so I felt like I can maybe just wait for Barbarossa here, who I think can be quite a nice transitional leader. So if I get him a bit later, hopefully I will be able to use Cleo for some more turns, and then if I at some point get Barbarossa, maybe get 2 activations out of him, I do think that is quite a nice amount of value. and with that I felt like it is fine to just wait for him, or maybe also Genghis Khan or Michelangelo could potentially work for me. I draw 3 cards thanks to the Colosseum. I draw a Fighting Band, Tactic, and a Reign of Terror. Genghisip this turn will go for the Monarchy and just finishes the Stonehenge, builds a warrior, and then takes the Urban Growth. Arne this turn seeds, opens the development of politics. I've drawn a Call to Arms, a colonization card, and an aggression with that. Arne will take the Code of Laws for 2 civil actions, but it is of course a nice technology to have with Aristotle, giving him more space in hand to take more technologies, and generally getting the 5th civil action is of course quite strong. He then builds a knight, plays the medieval army tactic, putting a little bit of pressure on me and funestus. Genghisip with having Nostradamus is quite safe. Soon he will be able to finish the Colossus, so he is now nicely prepared for the strength events at the moment. But he didn't take a copy of Alchemy, meaning I will get one at my next turn, which I was happy to see. Funestus takes an Alchemy and he takes the Forbidden City, then increases his population, builds a warrior to get a bit stronger and also to get out of corruption. At the next turn can either start some science upgrades or maybe can finish the Forbidden City. It's my turn, I'm the weakest, and with that I didn't really want to seed. And there is now this copy of Alchemy available for me for 1 civil action. I have Cleopatra, and I just think that's just too strong to not go for that. You can also see, though, that there is also Barbarossa on the row. But I figured that if I don't take a lot else from the row, and there is 1 card that I will take, but that will be a little spoiler on the discard spot. And I figure that if I don't take any more cards from a non-discard spot, then it should be quite likely that Barbarossa is available for me at the next turn, and if he for some reason isn't available, then at least I have the Swordsman, I have Genghis Khan, I have the Phalanx tactic, and maybe copy medieval army, or maybe I have a chance to draw still a heavy cavalry tactic, so that could also be somewhat fine, but I was hoping to still get Barbarossa at the next turn. So I take the Alchemy, I go for an upgrade, I build a warrior to get out of corruption, and I don't necessarily need the strength, or I do need the strength, because together with the Fighting Band tactic I can actually avoid being the weakest, which could be quite relevant. So doing that is first of all getting me out of corruption, but it's also I think just generally nice to do in order to avoid being the weakest. And then I take the Swordsman, there's a copy of Knights available for 3 civil actions, but it's just, that's just too expensive, and if that copy of Knights is taken away by one of my opponents, then both Swordsmen would be gone, there would be only 1 copy of Knights left, and that felt a little bit too vulnerable for me. Also with my plan of going for Barbarossa, I really would like to invest into an H1 technology instead of only building warriors with Barbarossa, so I felt like I really should take the Swordsman here for 1 civil action. I keep the Phalanx tactics still, maybe still hoping for Knights, an event as well as a colonization card. I draw the Reds. The strategic territory is revealed, which Genghisip is able to win for just a warrior, so that's nice for him. He takes the Code of Laws, develops it, takes the irrigation, increases his population and builds a warrior as well as taking the rich land. And the reason why I thought it's unlikely that Barbarossa won't be discarded before my turn is that I thought it's unlikely that Genghisip will take the warfare with already having monarchy, and then Arne is not able to take Michelangelo, and that already is enough to make sure that Barbarossa is available for me at the next turn. Arne this turn finishes the Colossus, starts some food upgrades, takes the warfare and a breakthrough. Actually, both copies of Knights have appeared now in the row, so I might still have a chance to take one of those if I want to at the next turn. Funestus can go for the Masonry with having the Forbidden City. I think that's quite a strong technology for him. He also decides to finish the Forbidden City first before going for the Alchemy, and then he will develop the Swordsman, upgrade 1, which allows him to defend against an aggression from Arne if he has 2 defense cards available, which of course might be the case, but maybe he's also bluffing or is willing to take the risk. Now it is my turn. I will first of all seed the Reign of Terror into the deck. I'm not the weakest when I'm seeding, and I will now go for Barbarossa. I was hoping that I will be in a position to avoid being the weakest, and with that was willing to push the Reign of Terror. The event revealed is the Pestilence, which could potentially allow me some interesting options, because in some lines I either did 2 Barbarossa activations or I played Frugality, and then afterwards did one Barbarossa activation, but before the Pestilence was revealed, doing that would have actually brought me into the next step of consumption, which would have cost me a food, but now the Pestilence allows me to get 2 more population out without going into consumption. That I was actually quite happy to see the Pestilence here. The Pestilence also one of the reasons why I was willing to see it. As you can see, Funestus doesn't have a free population, Arne doesn't have a free population, only Genghisip, who has also seen the seed with Nostradamus, has a free population, so that does some damage here to my opponents. So I was happy to see that the event worked out nicely for me. I this turn will develop the Swordsman. I will go for Barbarossa, and of course I also want to use Cleo's resources to upgrade a lab. And the game is now already, it's already a little while ago until it has, since it has finished. And I, when now looking back at it, didn't understand one thing, looking back at the turn, because I will go for Barbarossa, I will elect him, I will use his ability to recruit a swordsman, and then I will upgrade the alchemy, as well as playing the cultural heritage. It's a perfectly solid turn, nothing bad about it, but I was just a bit surprised that I didn't use the frugality here instead of playing the cultural heritage, because before doing the first Barbarossa activation I could have played the frugality. I don't take any cards from the row, so it is probably quite likely that I get another turn in H1, which would allow me to just use the frugality at the next turn, but still, there's no guarantee that the age doesn't end, and playing the cultural heritage, first of all, there could be dark ages, but it's also not the most urgent thing that I need to do. So I think I probably had a reason. I remember that I did put some thought into this turn, but now I don't remember exactly why I didn't play the frugality. Maybe there was a chance, depending on what events could be revealed. I mean, I have knowledge about rats, so it's from that perspective fine to not play the frugality. No, I could have already played it now that the Pestilence was revealed. Before the Pestilence, that wasn't really that nicely possible. So I don't know exactly. It feels that I maybe should have played the frugality here, but yeah, maybe I had a specific reason to not play it here. As you can see, I don't take the knights. I first of all just really, I mean, I could have, instead of playing the cultural heritage, I could have taken the knights, but then I would have had a full hand. I could have, of course, also started going into the phalanx tactic, but I can upgrade those warriors. I have already the swordsman in hand, so I felt like I'd rather want to play civil action efficiently and not take another technology in hand here. Genghisip seeds and opens 2 new deposits, which gives Funestus the most resources. He will go for irrigation, goes for 2 upgrades, takes the knights, increases his population, and then interestingly is willing to use the urban growth to build another religion, which he will need soon, maybe for the additional happy phase. Also it gets him out of corruption, but it's still interesting because he is playing Nostradamus, and such a move can of course be a hint towards something like immigration or rebellion. He is now the only player with 2 happy phases, so certainly something to keep in mind. Arne offers a naval trade agreement to Funestus, wants to have an additional colonization for Funestus. Funestus is interestingly willing to accept it, but he also maybe can really use the additional blue tokens. As we can see, looking at his civilization with the new deposits, he has quite a lot of resources lying around. Arne will build an additional temple, switches to Columbus this turn, and takes the rich land as well as the reserves. Funestus goes for the alchemy, goes for 2 upgrades, increases his population, it gets him out of corruption, builds the swordsman, upgrades 1, and then takes the knights in hand. With that, it indeed happened that the age doesn't end before my next turn. I don't see it, as I'm the weakest, and will get stronger this turn. As you can see, this turn I will play the frugality, and I have just enough food left afterwards to go for another Barbarossa activation. Instead of playing the frugality, there could have been the option to just go for 1 iron upgrade here and maybe then doing 1 Barbarossa activation, but then the frugality would be stuck in my hand. I could still just take the iron in hand. Actually, all of the copies of iron have been quite light, so it might be quite nice to still secure one of those and be able to upgrade into some resource production. I could now just do this Barbarossa activation, maybe upgrade warriors, and then I could take the iron, maybe just develop it to play civil action efficiently, or maybe take another card like Urban Growth or Warfare. That could be fine, it would not be bad to start a bit of iron production now. But it's also quite late, and at that late of a point, I don't want to overpay on iron, especially if a card like James Watt is in the game, who allows me to go into coal very quickly. Generally, yeah, I like going into coal generally quite a bit if I have good science income, if I have that already fixed. And so it felt a bit bad spending 2 civil actions to then go into a setup that I maybe rather just would evaluate as mediocre. And additionally, there, apart from the Ocean Liner service, aren't maybe the most exciting wonders in the game. And with that, now setting up some resource production to maybe then be able to go for an H2 wonder is maybe not the greatest way to go here. And instead, I actually rather wanted to grab an H1 wonder now, the St. Peter's Basilica, to then go into coal in H2. I felt that might be the better way around here. And the St. Peter's Basilica with the Colosseum is not bad. I have actually gotten quite a lot of population out. I'm now already at the next step of consumption, despite it still being H1, because of having taken the development of settlement, frugality. So as soon as I now lose the 2 yellow tokens, the St. Peter's Basilica will make it that I have just the amount of happy faces that I need for now. And also, you might remember Genghisip building that religion. That, of course, as said, could be a sign of rebellion, immigration, and rebellion could hit me quite badly. And it's also something that I was quite afraid of, that maybe a rebellion could happen before I will be able to finish the St. Peter's Basilica. But I was hoping that maybe I could also just still finish it in time and potentially dodge such a bad event. So I felt it should be a good idea. I have that engineering genius, I can finish it at the next turn. I certainly wanted to upgrade, after using Barbarossa, I wanted to at least upgrade 1 warrior. That puts me at 9 strength, which makes me the strongest for now. And then the question is, do I also want to upgrade the last warrior? The advantages of that are that I use all of my draws, or all of my military actions now in H1, giving me more H2 draws. And I also felt it's certainly a possibility that the 1 strength could make a difference. Maybe Arne could develop something like Warfare, build another knight. Funestus could just go for another swordsman. So Genghisip maybe going for another warrior. I guess that still would leave me as the strongest, but all of the opponents, especially Funestus, for Arne it's a bit harder, could maybe go up to 10 strength. And I felt if I'm at 10 strength, then it actually is quite a bit difficult for my opponents to overtake me, making it that I could have actually a reasonable shot of being the strongest at my next turn, maybe winning a strength event. So I, at the end, was willing to go for even another upgrade, which still leaves me with just enough resources to finish the St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn. Genghisip seeds, and the event revealed is a Confucius event, so 1 science for everyone. Genghisip is willing to go into iron, it's almost H2 already, but he's actually the first player going into iron upgrades. He then increases his population, builds a warrior, so that he isn't the weakest, and takes the urban growth. Now H2 starts. Arne draws some cards from the Colossus. He colonizes a colony with Columbus. Has he had to jackpot here? He didn't, but still, he got the best H1 colony, so that is still quite strong, and he still has drawn 3 cards, so maybe he still will be able to do something with them. He will build a knight, he takes the iron, and then with the Ridgeland, he still, after building a knight, can go for just 1 upgrade, starts a bit of resource production. If he plays the reserves for resources at the next turn, he can even go for 2 more upgrades and complete his upgrades very quickly. Funestus grabs this early Nobel. He has already a strong science income, so it's not really a bottleneck that needs to be fixed, but I think having even more science is rarely bad, especially with still needing a government form, and also the 2 strengths from Nobel are just quite strong, and also the Nobel I think would be the perfect replacement leader for me. I mean, maybe not perfect, because I also have a very good amount of science, but still I would have very much liked it to replace my Barbarossa with Nobel. And then Funestus takes the last copy of iron, meaning that I now need to wait for coal, but I was fine with that outcome. Now it is my turn, and I have a difficult decision to make. Because there are quite some reasons to push, But there's also one very big reason to not push here, and that one very big reason is of course a potential rebellion, which would cost me my whole turn here. But there are also some reasons to push. I'm the strongest, so I have a chance to now push a strength event out, while after my turn, Funestus would be strongest, and maybe Funestus will also soon build a swordsman or something. So now I have maybe a short window where I'm actually the strongest. Additionally, I have that copy of Rats in hand, which is at the moment just perfect for me, and two of my opponents have actually already started some irrigation food production, so I felt like putting that into the next deck could really cause some damage to them. Of course, Genghisip sadly sees with Nostradamus what I'm playing, but still, he maybe can't that easily play around it, and it should still cost him a little bit of food. So I was thinking, it could be really nice pushing the Rats into the next event deck and potentially revealing a strength event. But there is, of course, the threat of a rebellion, and it's a tough question how to play in such a situation. Do you play it carefully, potentially missing out on some value in a lot of games, but maybe in a few games where rebellion is actually on top, you then maybe don't lose a whole turn and have a very big setback in the game? And I do think sometimes you shouldn't play too carefully. Here, however, we have seen earlier Genghisip that he built that religion, and that is now exactly the happy face that he needs to not be hit by a rebellion. It could also be a sign, as I said, to maybe that maybe an immigration could be coming, but it could definitely also be a sign that maybe a rebellion is coming. And with that sign, maybe the chances that a rebellion is coming are not that high, are a bit higher, and with that, maybe it would be worthwhile to just play it safe here, finish St. Peter's Basilica, and just have a solid turn. I could finish St. Peter's Basilica, take the rich land, or take the warfare, and that would, I think, be just a very solid turn. I, however, talked myself into seeding here because of potential strength events and the Reds just being a nice event to have in the next event deck. If I don't seed it now, the event deck might flip, and then I don't get into the next event deck, and in two event decks in the event deck after, I really don't know if that will be a nice event for me. So I talked myself into pushing. Let's see what outcome that had for me. And yeah, sadly I got hit by Rebellion here, and with that my turn is also already ended. So I of course was quite a bit frustrated here, and no, but maybe I should have played it, or in hindsight definitely, but also without hindsight knowledge, I think I maybe should have played it a bit more carefully here because of the signs from Genghisip. If there wouldn't be any special signs, if maybe at least one of the opponents also has some unhappy workers, so that I'm not the only one getting hit by the event, maybe I should push because there is some nice value in putting the Reds in and the chance of winning a strength event. But here I had some signs, and I still talked myself into pushing, and I maybe rightfully got punished for it. So yeah, that is of course quite a big setback, losing a whole turn. At least I don't have corruption, so that's at least something. There's no key card or something that I'm missing out on, but it would have been quite nice to just finish St. Peter's Basilica, get a rich land, and that will now be of course quite a big setback. I draw the Napoleonic army tactic as well as Ravages of Time, popularization of science. It's nice to have knowledge about Ravages of Time because together with the St. Peter's Basilica, the Colosseum is a wonder that you really don't want to lose. We will now realize also the aftermath of my decision of seeding, because not only do I lose my whole turn, but with now not having been able to finish the St. Peter's Basilica, I am sadly also not part of that immigration. With 3 happy faces, I am, unless Genghisip would have improved his happy face count, would have been the only one to win that event. Now I'm not part of it, and instead Genghisip and Arne win that event, so another setback, and I was of course a bit frustrated after seeing that event also revealed immediately afterwards, and now we also see that Genghisip building the religion. If he had knowledge about both events, I'm not 100% certain, but likely he maybe both of those events were a reason to build a religion earlier on. Genghisip is willing to secure himself a copy of cannons for 3 civil actions and then takes an engineering genius. The other cards probably not too interesting for him, so maybe not the most efficient turn, but he can now go for a wonder quite efficiently with that yellow card and has secured himself a copy of cannon, so that's not too bad. Arne builds another warrior, making sure that he is the strongest, and then plays the reserves, taking the revolutionary idea. Now it's Funestus' turn, he seeds. The developed territory has been revealed. We can see that at the time when funestus seeded, I was actually the weakest, so there was some logic to it, to maybe wanting to seed at the window when I'm actually the strongest instead of maybe soon being the weakest. But no, sadly, with the rebellion, that probably wasn't the correct call. Arne, with having the I just wanted to say with having the cartography, but of course he hasn't the cartography, he only has it in hand, not developed. He has the 2 colonization force because of the pact and the Colossus, but with that colonization force, he is able to win that colony for just a night. Funestus this turn starts to go for some iron upgrades, takes the selective breeding to secure himself an option to upgrade his food production. Now it's my turn. After Arne has won the colony, I am actually again the strongest at my turn, and now the rebellion is out, so I decided to push again. And this time I think I put the popularization of science into the deck, which I guess is not too great against funestus at the moment, but it still seemed like the safest event. I definitely don't want to push the Ravages of Time, and the Crusades are a bit unclear at the moment, so I pushed the popularization of science. But sadly, the next bad event is revealed for me, the Dark Ages. At least this time I'm not the only one who suffers from it. Funestus loses 8 science as well, Genghisip only 1 and Arne 3. Of course, you could argue that again I shouldn't have pushed, but the truth is that I wouldn't have spent any science this turn, so it's actually better to see it revealed now, ironically, than after my turn. I mean, I could have gone into Monarchy, but with having the Colosseum and with the Colosseum allowing a Republic quite nicely, I really wanted to leave myself open for an H2 government form here. And yeah, but sadly the next bad event, of course you might argue you have that much science saved up, losing 8 now isn't even the biggest setback, but long term it will definitely hurt, because I still need a government form, I need coal, selective breeding, military technologies, and soon, especially if I find a government form, I think I will miss the 8 science that I lost here. So yeah, but it's of course the danger when you go for an early science setup without being able to invest the science immediately. So I get punished here, but at least funestus also loses 8 science, but he has the bigger science income, so he might be able to recover a bit more quickly from that, from those Dark Ages. I this turn will take Darwin. Barbarossa isn't doing anything for me at the moment, and with having Colosseum plus St. Peter's Basilica, Darwin works quite nicely for me. I can either go for operas or arenas as a nice happy face solution, so I will go for Darwin here, and then I will just finish the St. Peter's Basilica. The cards in the row I think are not the most exciting for me. As said, I don't want to go into Monarchy here, and so I think that's just a very solid turn. And yeah, with that, I think that should be the best option here. And of course I was frustrated here that I have gotten hit by the rebellion, but my position is still not that bad. Now with having finished the wonder and having Darwin, I maybe will be able to get a bit of a culture lead towards Arne and Funestus. I still have a decent amount of science plus science income. I am prepared to either get into a government form or into coal. Darwin here I think is also quite strong, because he allows me to go into coal even if it isn't a 3 civil action area, because without him I wouldn't have the amount of civil action to take the coal, develop it and go for an upgrade, but thanks to the discount of Darwin that is now possible, so I think that's also one reason why Darwin I think is quite strong here. But yeah, I'm prepared to either go into coal or into a government form, so things are not looking too bad, but still, at this point, I was of course a bit frustrated, and my resource and food income at the moment is not that great, but I still have 2 free population, so I was thinking maybe things aren't looking that bad. Also, I draw an international trade agreement, which I actually, which is of course quite nice. Genghisip seeds and opens the reds. So at least that event did now do a little bit of damage. Genghisip losing 5 food, Arne 4, funestus 3, I don't lose any food. So at least the reason, or the maybe one of the reasons that pushed me into a decision of seeding in the rebellion has now worked out at least somewhat well. Genghisip has taken the Engineering Genius too, and with that is willing to secure himself a wonder, maybe also because again the card row isn't offering him the most exciting options, but the Eiffel Tower I think can be quite nice. The happy face will be relevant as soon as he gets the next population out. Maybe before finishing it he can go into scientific method to fix the science income, and then he can maybe increase his culture lead even more. He has Nostradamus at the moment, and I felt now with him securing scientific method in the Eiffel Tower, his position really isn't looking that bad. For example, example, Arne still needs to fix his economy while turn for turn falling more and more behind in culture. So at this point I would rate Genghisip's position quite a bit higher than Arne's position. And also funestus in my position, I think maybe can't really compete with Genghisip's, but of course still a lot can happen, and there are still ways to catch up nicely. Arne has now upgraded a little bit of everything, has gone for science, resource and food upgrades, but hasn't completed anything yet, but maybe will be able to do it at the following turns. Funestus takes a copy of organized religion, navigation, journalism, and upgrades a mine. Also builds a swordsman to not be the weakest after his turn. Now it's my turn. I start my turn by offering the international trade agreement to funestus. I want the additional resources here. I think I need the additional resource to build up my economy nicely over the next few turns. I considered offering it to Genghisip because, to be honest, I was a bit skeptical about my abilities to catch up to him. Of course, I shouldn't overestimate his position. He still needs to be able to defend himself and so on, and in H3 a lot can happen, so it's no place I should give up here, but I did feel like he might be tough to catch up to him, with him having a culture lead and also just a very solid economical position. So I thought about just maybe playing for second place or something, but I decided against it and offered the additional food production to funestus. Genghisip has irrigation farms, is somewhat deep into his yellow banks. I do think the additional food income would make quite a difference for him. So if I give him that, then it really will be difficult to catch up to him. Now I give it to funestus. Of course, it's helpful for him, but he soon might go into selective breeding anyway, and then I think he has very solid food income anyway, while Arne also has only irrigation, so I rather wanted to give maybe a player who has already quite strong food income a bit more food income, instead of helping Genghisip and Arne playing on irrigation for the rest of the game. This turn, there is a government form on the rows, which I was happy to see, allowing myself to invest my science. And with Darwin I can take it for only 2 civil actions. Maybe with the Colosseum and Republic would have been better, but in case I want to go for a bit of a military heavy stuff at some point, then of course the additional military actions will be helpful. I can develop the Conmon, I will take the selective breeding, I will take the cavalryman. And yeah, was a bit of a question, how do I want to play this turn, because I still need to get out of corruption. Committing to another swordsman didn't really feel that great. Of course, I could build a 4th mine, another farm, maybe a 3rd lab with Darwin. Those all could be interesting options, but I didn't feel too great. And at the end, I decided to actually commit to the cavalryman already. I have that Napoleonic army. If I get the cannons, I should be able to make use out of those cavalrymen. And building one puts me 13 strength instead of 10, so that actually makes the difference at the moment between being the strongest or the weakest. And at this point, I think I checked the event deck or the remaining events, and sadly we can't see the ones that I had in hand and discarded, but I think out of the remaining events, and it weren't that many, were a lot of strength events, so I expected, and also of course I have seeded the Reign of Terror into the deck, which I actually have been maybe a bit lucky that it hasn't been revealed yet. I think I was at least sometimes the weakest, so I knew about that event, and I thought it's not unlikely that there will be more strength events, so I was willing to do that commitment. But it is a bit of a commitment. Now I don't have enough science to go into coal at the next turn. I also wouldn't have enough resources, so it might slow my economy down a little bit, but yeah, I thought it could be quite important to maybe avoid potential strength events, maybe even win some strength events myself, and yeah, and I might need a cavalryman at some point anyway. And now we can see that now, of course, I really would have liked to have 8 additional science if the Dark Ages wouldn't have hit. I draw in scientific cooperation, but I have already a strong pact, otherwise that maybe could have been interesting. I draw the wealthy territory in the war over territory. Genghisip this turn will go for Newton. That will give him a big boost to his science income, takes the patriotism, the breakthrough into reserves, gets 3 strong yellow cards, all for 1 civil action, so that's not bad. But with replacing Nostradamus, I mean, he would have been weakest even with Nostradamus, but now he's even more clearly the weakest. Arne Seeds and a Reign of Terror is revealed, so I managed to dodge that one now, and Genghisip will now get hit by it. Arne goes for an upgrade, takes the Urban Growth, plays the Revolutionary Deer, takes the Rifleman over the cannons for 1, so that already could be an indicator that he maybe has a fitting tactic in hand for Rifleman plus Knights. Otherwise, maybe he wouldn't have valued the Rifleman more highly than the cannons here, especially with having a decent amount of food income and being able to just build some cannons. Funestus this turn will go for some additional food income. Of course, now the +1 that I've given him is somewhat useful for him, allowing him to increase his population twice at the next turn. Yeah, but generally he will now get a lot of population out anyway. Now it's my turn, and I will actually go for a bit of an interesting call that I first maybe didn't really notice. But yeah, I still thought maybe there are some more strength events coming. I thought maybe I just want to push. But I thought maybe I have now an opportunity to actually disrupt Genghisip a bit, and maybe with that open a window to shorten the gap a little bit to him. Because I have now committed to that cavalryman, which has slowed down my economy a bit, but maybe I can actually make use out of it now, and I decided to declare war over territory against Genghisip. I sadly don't have an H2 tactic, but what I can do is just build another cavalryman and copy the medieval army tactic, of course costing me some draws, but making me the strongest. Maybe I can even threaten an aggression. I am again prepared for all of the strength events, and I am 10 strength ahead of Genghisip. He now can't just finish the Eiffel Tower, or maybe he can, but he maybe needs to react to that. Loses a population anyway to the Reign of Terror, needs to destroy something for that. And yeah, with that, I felt like that war might be a bit disruptive for him, and I also felt like that I should have really relatively good chances to, it should be quite unlikely that I lose this war. There's a chance that Genghisip could tie. For example, he could go for an outdated version of defensive army, build 2 cannons, reveal the tactic. Potentially, if he has that, he could even go for a 3rd cannon, but at some point it is really costing him. So that war is not without risk. It could happen that I will actually lose a yellow token. At least it wouldn't have immediate consequences for me, because as you can see, I will take all of those yellow cards, which I think should be useful, as well as taking the Rifleman away, taking an option away from Genghisip to just upgrade all of those warriors, meaning if he wants to increase his strength by a significant amount, he has to build new units. So I really wanted to make sure to deny the Rifleman here. Thanks to Darwin, it's also only costing me 1 civil action. And then, as said, those yellow cards should be quite useful to have. The efficient upgrade allowing me to go into coal efficiently at the next turn. So losing a yellow token now maybe doesn't have any immediate downsides for me, but winning a yellow token, which I was hoping that it might happen, could be quite strong for me, because soon I will lose 2 yellow tokens, and currently I would first of all have an uprising issue and a famine issue at the same point, but now with just getting 1 additional yellow token, I don't have any happy face issues and no famine issues as soon as I lose the 2 yellow tokens. If I should lose a yellow token now, then when I lose 2 more yellow tokens, I still have just an uprising issue. Maybe it gets even a bit harder to fix it. Of course, it would be not that great, but I was hoping that I have quite a bit better chances to win this war than to lose it, or Genghisip would need to do quite the investments to win this war, even if he has the right cards in hand. And with that, I was willing to go for that war, hoping that it will disrupt Genghisip a little bit. And I, of course, was very interested in seeing his response. He doesn't have enough science for strategy, which was also important to take a look at. He actually offers the open borders agreement to funestus. I was a bit afraid to see it, because maybe that could allow him some additional play. Maybe he can disband more warriors and transition into something new or something. But yeah, funestus, luckily for me, rejects the open borders agreement. Genghisip actually lost the religion to the Reign of Terror, but gets the happy face back by finishing the Eiffel Tower, increases his population, builds 2 cannons, has to destroy labs, so it is causing some damage to him here. And does he have the outdated class defensive army tactic? That would actually make it that we would tie in the war. He doesn't, so I was very happy to see that, and I will now be able to steal a yellow token from him. Arne goes for his second lab upgrade, takes the commons, has now fixed his civil actions, goes for James Cooked for a little bit of culture income, upgrades his last mine, plays the classic army tactic. As I said, when you took the rifleman for 2 over the cannons for 1, that definitely can take that as a sign, and now he has already revealed the tactic. Funestus cedes and opens to historic territory. I was actually willing to bid on that. I don't need as many swordsmen, but at the end Funestus wins it, who has the navigation. Funestus will then go for the strategy for 3, makes him quite a bit safer, and now he has a safe amount of civil military actions, develops the knights so that he can maybe copy the classic army tactic if he hasn't a tactic of his own. Now it's my turn, I am the strongest, and I was hoping that maybe I will also remain the strongest for a little bit longer, and with that I felt it is a nice timing now to put at a very late time the Crusades into the deck that I kept in hand, because those should be revealed very soon and might give me a bit of a culture boost. First of all, I will steal a yellow token from Genghisip, as said that the yellow token will be extremely relevant for me. I see the Crusades, the Raiders are revealed, so sadly not the biggest strength events revealed so far, but still the Raiders will now hurt Genghisip and Arne a little bit. And this turn there's finally the coal on the row, so I decided to go into the coal now, develop the coal, go for 1 upgrade with the efficient upgrade, taking the cannons for the Napoleonic army tactic, the rich land, and then playing the reserves. I passed the breakthrough. I could have also, instead of taking rich land and playing reserves, could have gone for the breakthrough. But a rich land might allow me to just go for a bit more quickly into all of those mine and farm upgrades. So I felt like in this case the breakthrough is not that much better, that I want to be 1 civil action behind. Also I would have a full hand, which is a bit bad when you have that entering H3, so despite the science actually being quite valuable for me, I prefer the rich land for civil action cheaper, and can then make sure to make space in my hand by already playing the reserves for resources. I then draw a bunch of cards, immigration as well as 2 aggressions. Genghisip cedes. Sadly, the Good Harvest is revealed instead of the Crusades, which is a bit unfortunate because we will see that Genghisip actually will overtake me now in strength, so if the event order would have been different, I would have won the Crusades, but of course it was a coin toss, and those won't always go in your favor. So Genghisip reveals now the fortifications tactic, so he didn't have an outdated defensive army, but now he can actually make use out of the fortifications, and with this banding of warrior 2 cannons, he first of all is using his military actions now in H2, so that he has more draws in H3, and it also makes it that he is actually the strongest. And he has seen me just pushing an event which is quite suspicious, or is looking really like I might have put a strength event in, so that also might have been a reason why he was willing to really make sure that he is strongest now. And he also was somewhat right to do that. H3 starts, Arne actually gets some additional draws from the Colossus. He sees an H2 event, and the Crusades are revealed now, giving Genghisip a bit of additional culture, Arne being the weakest, which was a bit unfortunate for him, because he will now actually get strongest this turn. Maybe should have waited with seeding, but maybe also had some important events to get into the deck. He takes the first copy of Revolutionary Idea as well as the journalisms. Funestus this turn goes for the journalism that he took earlier, can increase his population quite a bunch of times after the Good Harvest, builds the journalism, builds 2 knights actually, and then copies to the classic army tactic, making him the strongest. So now I'm actually the weakest, so I can maybe also be a bit happy that at least both Genghisip and Arne seeded, because now I could even be in danger of just losing to the Crusades. And I at least will be able to get a bit stronger this turn with just copying the classic army tactic, making me the second strongest. I don't push, as there might be some strength events coming. And this turn I had to decide how do I want to fix my population income. There's an ocean liner service that I could take for 4 civil actions, which is somewhat expensive, and it's also quite late. H3 has already started. Or I could go for the selective breeding. I thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that I like it more to actually take the ocean liner service here. What are the reasons for that? First of all, I of course could decide to go for some selective breeding upgrades already this turn, but that would then delay some coal upgrades maybe. I mean, I have the rich land, I could develop the selective breeding, but I don't have enough resources to go, for example, for 1 farm and 2 mine upgrades. What I think I could do would be, or would I be able to do? No, I also don't have enough resources to go for 2 farm and 1 mine upgrade, so I can't go for 3 upgrades in total despite having the rich land. And then going for food income now would just delay my mine upgrades, and if I do this, the next population will still be unhappy, and then already I go even deeper into consumption, meaning I then, despite having upgraded 2 farms, don't even get that much population out. Well, with the ocean liner service, I can now actually use my last 2 civil actions to just upgrade both mines, putting me now at 10 resource production, and I can then just finish the ocean liner service at the next turn, which, compared to developing the selective breeding now, just gives me a population at the next turn. But thanks to getting an additional yellow token from the ocean liner service, that population will actually be happy. And thanks to the ocean liner service just being so insanely strong that it gives you a free population every turn, it probably will also just give me more population than going for selective breeding upgrades now. And that's comparing to going for the upgrades now to but of course, if I, for example, wanted to go for those mine upgrades anyway and go for the selective breeding upgrades at the next turn, then it will be even later. So I think that's just, again, another showcase on how insanely strong the ocean liner service is. And that it still is just the best solution. Probably the one big downside is, of course, the civil action cost. Developing and upgrading selective breedings is only 3 civil actions, while taking and finishing ocean liner services 8 civil actions. So that's, of course, a significant difference, and could be a reason to maybe say I should rather go for the selective breedings. But the problem is also I don't have the most science income, and of course, even with going for the ocean liner service, I might at some point need to go into selective breeding to fix famine issues, but I maybe at least can delay the science investment by a little bit, and that I think could be quite relevant, maybe allowing me, for example, to go into something like multimedia first, maybe a military technology first, something like civil service. I can just maybe not go into 0+4 science now, and have a bit of more science lying around a little bit longer. So with that reason also, I decided that the ocean liner service is the best way to fix my population income here. I will get my first age 3 draws, Impact of Architecture, Colonization card, and the Raid. And now that we are at the beginning of age 3, I think it's also a good time to take a look at the overview. And considering that I got hit by Rebellion and those big Dark Ages, I thought my position is at least decent. I'm definitely still completely in the game. I have the second most culture. I have now 10 resource production, which is by far the most resource production of all of the players. Soon I will be able to fix my food income, and yeah, then I actually might have at least very playable position. Genghisip still has the most culture, but maybe also partly because of my war. He has some issues, only 1 lab. He has some uprising issues, and actually considered denying him the organized religion, but I maybe don't need it that much, and I didn't want to do this hate draft here, even though it could cause quite some issues for Genghisip, but he could also just suspend a warrior, and maybe not going for the organized religion could then even make it that he instead goes into oil or something, now that he doesn't have to do that anyway. So while it of course takes a strong option away from him, it might just open up some other doors. So I didn't want to go for any denial here. So he can fix his uprising issues this turn, can develop the organized religion and the architecture for free with Newton. But then he doesn't have the most population income. He has a fine tactic, so that should be fine, but at the moment he's the weakest, so he needs to do some investments in order to get stronger again, and then his resource income is not the best. He has, of course, Newton, he has more civil actions than you can see here, basically, so still maybe he has the best position, but I was happy on how I closed the gap, and I was thinking that there could still be something possible to maybe overtake Genghisip here. Arne has a solid economy, 7 civil actions, 6 science income, 6 resource production, not the most food income, is the second weakest at the moment. So I felt like his position is not ideal, but overall the positions are relatively close, so every player is here still in the game. The same is true for funestus, who has more science income at the moment than Arne, same amount of culture income. definitely better food income and the same amount of resource income. So his economy is, I think, better than Arne's. He has the strength lead. The only thing that he is still missing is a government form, but with his big science income, he should be able to go into one soon. So maybe at this point, I would think that Arne might have the worst position, but it's not a bad position. I mean, he has 2 free population, so he will be able to do something with that position, and every player at this point, I think, is still in the game. Genghisip goes for the organized religion, develops the architecture, builds one, takes the first copy of Air Forces, and then disbands a warrior to build a cannon, costing him at least some draws, but also making it that he is the strongest instead of the weakest. Arne this turn goes for an interesting play. He takes the military theory for 3, takes Churchill for 2 civil actions, elects Churchill, uses the revolutionary idea to develop the military theory, and then uses Churchill for only some resources to build a rifleman already, making him the strongest. Maybe it looks like he has some strength events, but maybe it also looks like that with his early Colossus draws, plus the 3 additional draws that he already had, he might have drawn some very aggressive cards that he wants to make use of. So that is really looking like it could be the case. So now I have to be, of course, quite careful that I am not the victim of any war. Funestus takes the copy of oil that maybe Genghisip could have also gotten into if he wouldn't have been distracted maybe by fixing his happy faces and taking the air forces. Funestus goes up to 9 resource income. At least the investment of the 9 science will maybe again delay his government form a little bit. This turn I think I seeded the immigration into the deck. I am the weakest, but I felt first of all I will remain the weakest for another turn, I think. Yes. I will remain the weakest, and with that I felt like I can maybe also just push an event that hopefully should be fine for me into the deck and score a bit of culture. The economic progress is revealed. I don't get any food, but I get the most resources out of it. 8 resources, so now I have, even after finishing the ocean liner service, still 9 resources left, which I was happy to see. I finished the ocean liner service. I think I really don't want to delay that. I then can increase my population, and then I have 2 civil actions left. I could now increase my population. For example, I could play the cannons, play the wave, maybe starting and transition into the Napoleonic army tactic. I could also maybe build another cavalryman, or I could develop rifleman, upgrade a bunch of swordsmen into riflemen, just to get a bit stronger, avoiding to be the weakest. But I thought here I maybe have the chance to set up for something and open up some options for me during H3, and I actually took both multimedia and movies here. I have no full hand, so that could be a bit of a disadvantage. But those cards I think could be quite interesting. Multimedia, of course, generally a strong card to invest into, and then together with the St. Peter's Basilica, movies also enough maybe to serve as a happy face solution. And then we have some synergy for those cards in the Leaders and Wonders mix. We have both Fleming and Chaplin, we have the Hollywood and the Internet, so I felt like it's not unlikely that I get one of those 2 leaders, one of those 2 wonders. And if I manage to maybe from now on mainly focus on being able to defend myself, so my plan was not to just immediately start spamming some movies, maybe I can make it to get one multimedia or one movie going or something to get a bit of production, but I have to be very careful, of course, that Arne or anyone else maybe goes for a big military push. And then if I manage to maybe save up a bit of resources, I maybe can actually go for a decent or even big Hollywood together with either Fleming and Chaplin. So I felt like it is worthwhile to take those 2 cards and be set up for such an option. There's also Gandhi in the row, with maybe the game turning into a bit of a military-heavy direction. It's of course something to consider, but Arne has actually 7 military actions, so even with Gandhi I would not be completely safe, so I don't think he is the greatest option here. I keep the impact of architecture, the wealthy territory. I draw actually 2 tactics, which the positional army maybe could be useful to have. Genghisip seeds and opens the international negotiations, which is not that great for me. So now, of course, it could have also had some benefits to get stronger. At least paying 3 resources, while annoying, is maybe not the worst for me. I still have a very decent amount of resource left. Of course, at one point, maybe when it I maybe in order to threaten a lot of strength will need every resource that I can get, or if I maybe want to get into movies in Hollywood or some stuff. But still, for the moment, I have still a lot of resources, and so I was somewhat happy with Genghisip choosing the resources. The science, I think, would have hurt me a bit more, but that also would have maybe allowed Arne to get into air forces at the next turn, which potentially maybe could be a bit dangerous for Genghisip. Maybe that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to give him science, or maybe just generally the science could have been quite valuable for Arne. Genghisip this turn goes into multimedia. So yeah, I mean now I guess he can go for another fortifications tactic, but if Arne would be able to get into air forces, would not be safe from a war. So I guess now taking the science away now allowed Genghisip to go for a bit more of a greedy line, commit to Gandhi, and maybe from the next turn on can then again focus a bit more on strength, but can now go up to 11 culture income and start to run away a little bit with the culture here. Arne is the strongest, seeds, and sadly a politics of strength is revealed, which will make it that I have to skip the next draw step, so I was not too happy to see all of those strength events, and Arne has now a lot of cards to work with. He takes the air forces, so that's a bit dangerous. Also now I and Funestus are the players without air forces, making it that Funestus has definitely the better chances to get the last copy, as the other players are playing in front of him. Arne makes sure to get a bit more food income going and also takes an urban growth. Funestus seeds, and now at least there's no strength event left, instead the popularization of science that I have seeded, which doesn't work out too great for me, but at least I got a 2 culture for seeding, so it's maybe not too bad. Funestus plays the revolutionary idea, goes for Einstein, the democracy. Because of going for oil, he can't go into democracy, but there was also the economic progress revealed. Maybe he had knowledge about that, and with that, I think the oil might have been still very strong. And then at the next turn, he might be able to get into Einstein, the democracy, and so on. I might turn him again the weakest, and I will actually get a bit stronger here, but now some bad strength events are already out, and I wanted to get some stuff in the deck, so I see that the impact of industry, of course, Funestus at the moment is a bit better in that impact, but I get 3 culture for seeding and it will score me some points against Arne and Genghisip. The inhabited territory is revealed. I was willing to bid 1 unit and my 2 cards, but it's not enough to win it. Instead Arne wins it for 1 unit, which is quite nice. I can increase my population with the ocean liner service. And yeah, here I decided that hopefully if I don't get punished for it, or I was hoping that I have enough resources and stuff to commit to 1 big building now, while still being somewhat safe for the military. And the question is what building to commit towards. Looking at the happy faces, the movies might make more sense, but if I go for movies and then the movies don't help me with the science income, it could get a bit short with the science income. And with that, I decided to, first of all, I will go for the Rifleman. I'm the weakest, I can use the Wave of Nationalism nicely, and also I got hit by the Politics of Strength, so now is a nice time maybe to use a lot of military actions, as I don't draw any cards anyway, and so I will use it to upgrade all of those swordsmen to Rifleman, so that I can go into the positional army tactic, and maybe threaten the modern army tactic, which also could be important, and so I go for all of those upgrades. And then I will build a multimedia so that at least in already the next turn I have enough science left to go into cannons, so that I can threaten 2 modern army tactics. And then in 2 turns I also will again have more science, so at some point I might also be able to get into air forces. So I was thinking the library maybe the better thing to invest into than the movies. Maybe it's also a bit greedy, but if I want to win this game, I maybe have to play it a little bit greedily. I think I have to hope that I can at least get that 1 multimedia going without being punished. And then there is now actually Fleming on the row. I'm perfectly set up for him. There's the potential of a very big Hollywood. So I took Fleming, and I took, after actually electing him, that was a question that I had to answer here myself. Because both Darwin and Fleming are giving me 3 culture income, so what is more important? Potentially saving a civil action or maybe even multiple civil actions with Darwin at the next turn. But I don't need that many technologies, basically only the air forces and maybe some others for potentially later like civil service. Or do I rather want to have Fleming's information about the military cards? At the end I went with Fleming because I said I don't need that many technologies. If the air forces are revealed, it's likely that Funestus will have a chance to take them, and probably he will take them. And Fleming allows me to just take a look at Arne's hand, which then allows me to very clearly know what I have to deal with. Does he have wars? What aggressions does he have? What tactics does he have? So I felt like getting that information as early as possible has some value to it, and I was willing to elect Fleming here. And then I took one copy of reserves. I actually keep only the positional army tactic, not the Napoleonic one. Potentially I could get punished for that, but I was just thinking that in most cases, positional army should be better. Of course, if I build 2 cannons, the Napoleonic army is giving me more strength, but soon I will at least be able to threaten to go into 4 cannons. And yeah, so I decided to keep this tactic. I am also actually the strongest now. After having gone for all of those upgrades, Genghisip is actually willing to go for another multimedia, so he feels somewhat safe here, I guess. While Arne has 7 military actions, he still needs to do some build-up, so at the moment Genghisip is somewhat safe, and at least he can take all of those yellow cards. Arne seeds, he opens the Cold War. I was extremely happy to see that, because I do think the 6 additional signs are very, very valuable for me here. Probably also for Arne, but nonetheless, I was very happy to see that. As you can see, the last copy of Air Forces is in the row. I was not too happy to see that. Maybe that at least could have been nice to be a bit longer uncertain who gets it, which Arne then has to consider now. If Funestus takes the Air Forces, which I have to expect, then he has the advantage of having them, and with him only being on classic army with H1 units, I do think the air forces are extremely important for him. So I really would have, of course, liked it to get a bit lucky here and maybe secure the air forces myself, or the air forces being late. It, I think, would have made me a lot safer. Now I sadly am the player without air forces. Arne will get some further draws. Funestus seeds, the immigration is revealed. I have actually seeded that, so I knew that I could get punished by building this multimedia, but I still was willing to do it, and maybe I shouldn't have done it, but the multimedia just seemed to be too good to get into. Funestus this turn to not go into goes for Einstein, so now there are Nobel Prizes in the game. He destroys a mine. I was happy to see that for the impact of industry. He then builds some more units, 1 more journalism, and takes the air forces. So has now enough resources saved up to build 2 more units in air forces, but not enough to build 2 more units, H1 units, and 2 air forces. So his strength potential is somewhat limited. Arne, by the way, has enough resources when he takes Churchill to build a rifleman and 2 knights. That costs 11, meaning he has 2 resources left. Meaning he's missing 1 resource to also build a professional sports, unless he gets the engineering. And as you can see at my turn, the engineering is actually revealed. So I won't be able to take that away. Genghisip has already architecture, so the strength potential for Arne that I had to count for him is that he will be able to go for 1 more army with a professional sports, which is not to be underestimated. So he will be able to go for a war, likely, because Funestus can't threaten as much strength, so only if maybe Arne is afraid of specific events, but at least the economic progress is already out. And the freedom of movement is actually, or that would be enough to go for another army and 2 air forces. So now I was a bit afraid will I be able to threaten enough strength? There's an Hollywood in the row, but just taking that would be way too greedy. I have now missed out in the Air Forces. I have to put some extra effort into getting stronger. So I take the military theory. I develop the cannons this turn. And I think here I just have to maybe bluff a little bit, and maybe also convincingly. I mean, it's not really a bluff. Long term, the positional army will just be the better tactic than the classic army tactic, so I need to do this anyway. But I think here I really maybe need to make it look like I have the modern army tactic, and so I think it's just best to commit into cannons immediately. I actually destroy lab. Sadly, the immigration hits me quite heavily here. But at least I still have enough science left to also go for the military theory the turn after I build a cannon. I take the urban growth, and then I actually build a religion, as I kinda need the happy faces soon, so and I didn't want to wait until going into movies. It would now be a bit difficult to go into military theory and movies, so I was hoping that I won't be forced to develop the military theory, as that might result into not being able to go for movies at all. And the question is now, of course, am I safe enough? And I also, of course, was able to take a look at Arne's military cards. Sadly, I haven't written them down, so there is some information missing now, but what I certainly have seen is that he has multiple wars and also aggressions in hand, so he can go for a war. He does have the war available. And yeah, I have 15 plus 4, 19 resources available. I can develop the military theory. And I could potentially just build 3 cannons, so I can go for 2 positional army tactics, but I can even threaten a bit more strength with going for the positional army. Don't have enough units yet to go for 3 positional armies, but who knows? I mean, even with freedom of movement, I would be missing 1 resource to go for 3 positional army 3 modern army tactics. But yeah, if I would have the modern army and also with the positional army, if I remember my calculations correctly, also with having the military theory on top, I will be able to threaten more strength than Funestus, and with that I was hoping that Arne, if he goes for a war, chooses Funestus instead of me as the war target, but of course I have a bit more culture. Maybe disrupting me hurts me even more because I have the big Hollywood potential, so I was a bit afraid because I'm definitely not safe here. I draw some cards. I was of course really hoping for the modern army, because while I now can't threaten 3 modern army tactics, I maybe soon will be, and being able to execute them actually could be quite important. I really was not happy to see this military alliance by Genghisip, so he apparently wants to have some peace with Gandhi, but maybe not really with offering a military alliance to the upcoming warmonger. He placed the revolutionary idea in order to develop the civil service, also develops the air forces, scores a Nobel Prize, will now already, after his turn, have more than 100 culture, disbands the warrior, builds an air force, and is now 37 strength, so that he isn't that much in danger of any aggressions. He also takes a bunch of cards, maybe trying to end the age a bit quicker. And I was very happy to see that Arne chooses Funestus as his war target, who has the lower strength potential, also less chances to see a helpful event revealed, and with that, yeah, I was, of course, quite a bit relieved. Arne goes for professional sports, but without the engineering, which means that he actually won't go for another tactic, which would have maybe caused him to destroy some stuff, and instead he actually goes for some upgrades, so he only goes up to 54 strength, but with not spending any food to increase his population, that allows him to go for that Red Cross now, also with not spending as many civil actions to build up all of that strength. So he now goes only up to 54, which I think I would have been able to beat. So now it actually makes a difference on what I can threaten, and only Funestus with his not so high strength potential allows Arne to have this option of going for a successful war, plus actually being able to go for the Red Cross. He then also takes the reserves and plays the endowment for 6 culture before he steals any culture. Funestus seeds, the crime wave is revealed. Sadly, I am one of the 2 weakest at the moment. He will develop the air forces, the organized religion, scores a Nobel Prize, scores a lot of culture with Einstein, increases his population a bunch of times, builds an air force, a knight, and actually only a warrior. So he could have gone for more if he would have been willing to maybe destroy some stuff, but he wants to keep his civilization nicely prepared for impacts and is willing to suffer a bit of a culture loss to that. He then also takes the efficient upgrade as well as building a step of Arne's Red Cross. Now it is my turn, and this turn I wanted to push because I have this wealthy territory, and that could actually be quite relevant here. Because when I go into the positional army tactic, I have some units of cavalrymen lying around that I don't really need, and I have a bunch of colonization cards in hand, and winning that colony could really be quite important, because I won't be able to end this age this turn, at least when I want to take the Hollywood, but I think even if I skip the Hollywood. I don't really have a chance to NDH here, if I remembered correctly. It's not possible. So I again could be in danger of a war. Arne had multiple wars in hand. He now maybe doesn't have the biggest potential, but still he can go for another army. And he could also go for the shock troops tactic, which I'm not sure if he had it in hand already when I checked it with Flaming, but he will have it later on, so that is also something that he could do. And yeah, then of course that colony maybe being revealed could really give me a surprisingly a big amount of strength that I can go for. I was hoping that I won't get hit by a war anyway, because I might now be too threatening after my turn. But the resources are of course not only helpful to defend myself, but also to make my Hollywood bigger. So I was really hoping here that those 9 resources could give me quite a boost and could result in quite a lot of points for me. So I really wanted to push that wealthy territory here. Get hit by the Independence Declaration, but I don't have any colonies to lose. I use the ocean liner, I will build a cannon that gets me out of corruption. I reveal the positional army tactic, of course, that makes my potential bluff of a modern army tactic not as great, but it still makes me a bit stronger. With the defense cards that I'm having, I think I am able to defend against Arne. At least, I'm not sure if that is an H2 or an H3 defense card. If that's an H2 one, then I might still be in danger of an aggression if the H ends before Arne's turn. So I wanted to reveal the tactic. Then maybe could go for the military theory, which still would leave me with enough science to go for movies in 2 turns. But I instead rather went for the Hollywood and the reserves, maximizing the amount of resources that I have. But it comes at a cost of being the weakest, but there are, apart from my wealthy territory, no H2 events left, so only an impact of strength would punish my low strength severely. And we will see if that is an H2 or an H3 defense card. If that is only an H2 one, then developing the military theory would have also made me more safe from a potential aggression if Arne wants to go for one. But I have now reserves, urban growth, another copy of reserves in hand. I have the Hollywood secured, and if I don't get hit by a war, I might be able to make that Hollywood relatively big. I don't had really the time to fix my food income here, so sadly I will have to suffer through a bit of famine again. I'm not sure if again, I think it's the first time that I have to suffer through famine. I was happy about my draw because the impact of culture could actually be quite nice. On the other hand, I was not too happy about the impact it was on top, because it is actually the impact of strength, which I think was seeded by Arne. Or at least it could have been seeded by Arne, so maybe another reason why he went for that strength push. And he is also getting the most culture out of it, and I sadly only gained 0 culture out of it, so of course I was not too happy to see that impact. Genghisip goes for another air force, goes into computers with the efficient upgrade, takes the internet, and will be able to finish that for a decent amount at the next turn. He now, with Arne not having gone for any additional armies and with him not having enough military actions to declare war and going for another army, Genghisip is again somewhat safe. So Gandhi, despite Arne having that many military actions, still was quite important in making Genghisip safer and allowing him to go for a bit more greedy plays than he otherwise would be able to do. Arne steals 14 culture from Funestus, overtakes him now by 2 culture, and again I was interested to see what he will do. And he goes for another war against Funestus. Takes the engineering, will use that to finish the Red Cross. I wasn't really able to build a step. I mean, I think I could have played a copy of reserves, but I need all of the resources for the Hollywood. So Arne gets quite a big Red Cross. He destroys a farm in order to build another tank, reveals the shock troops tactic, and goes up to 65 strength. So I think I would have been able to maybe threaten a bit more. I don't remember my calculations exactly, but especially if I have the modern army, which is at least possible. I think Arne might have even had 1 modern army tactic in hand when I took a look at his hand with Flaming. And I think in the last turn I again already took a look at hand of a player at Funestus' hand. I sadly don't remember what impacts they had in hand. I remember that it influenced my decision making, so I sadly can't give you the full information this time because I haven't written it down, and the replay feature you sadly can't see it. and the game is not open in the lobby any longer, so sadly I can't give you the information about what impacts they had in hand. I only remember one or two things that I can maybe mention at my last turn when I'm considering potential impacts, but yeah, I had some information because of that. And Arne is now going up to 65 strength, and let's see how funestus will respond to that. He seeds, and now out of the sudden my wealthy territory is revealed, which potentially could of course also help funestus quite a bit in the war. We will see that Arne is actually willing to bid a significant amount to it to maybe remove that option from funestus, but I'm actually the one to win it. I think that's just the amount that I was willing to bid, 2 cavalrymen and my 2 colonization cards, which actually will make me quite vulnerable to potential aggressions. But I still felt the 9 resources are totally worth it. And I also, thanks to Flaming, had a little bit of knowledge about the aggressions. And at my turn, we will see that I had some hope to at least not get hit by an aggression from Arne, but maybe from funestus. But I was willing to take those resources at this cost. Funestus, without winning the territory, will now be able to go for an Air Force, for an upgrade, putting him at 63 strength. Potentially could have even destroyed one more thing and built another warrior, but it only would have resulted in 1 additional strength. Now it's my turn. I will again take a look at Arne's hand, because I wanted to be certain of what aggressions I have to account on, which is really important in order to make it that my Hollywood calculations on how much I will be able to build are correct, because if there's a raid or something, that could be quite bad. And Arne has actually a plunder in hand. That's something that I definitely remember. So it's important that I play my turn that a plunder doesn't take my ability of finishing the Hollywood away. I then already commit to the impact of culture, so that I hopefully can also push the impact of architecture into the deck the next turn. However, I was very unhappy to see the impact of science after the impact of strength, the next very bad impact for me. So, yeah, sadly not the greatest impacts, but at least the impact of culture hopefully it should end up being quite nice for myself. Winning the wealthy territory for 2 units not only had the advantage of giving me those additional resources, but thanks to the units being now back into the yellow bank, I actually also have less famine issues. Normally those 2 yellow tokens would be here in cavalryman, and I would have 2 famine, which would have maybe forced me to play reserves for food. Now I don't have to do that, and thanks to that I actually will be able to make my Hollywood even bigger. So I will develop the movies. I build 1 that gets me out of corruption. And I will disband the rifleman. At this point I'm vulnerable to aggressions anyway, and impact of strength is already out, so there's not a lot of reason of keeping this rifleman apart from the impact of competition. I can build another movie. Thanks to the reserves, I still have enough resources to finish the Hollywood, even if I get hit by a plunder. And also thanks to the reserves, the wealthy territory, and not having to play reserves to avoid famine. I mean, I still have famine, but I have an amount of famine that is not that much culture, or I now have 20 resources plus 8 from the reserves, so 28, which is enough to build Hollywood for 16, and I have another 12 resources left, so I have 11 resources to build another movie. And that movie at the next turn will produce me 4 culture and 8 culture for the Hollywood. And having famine 2 turns costs me 8 culture, so because of the famine, making my Hollywood even bigger isn't as great as it could have been, but it's still better to just accept the famine and make the Hollywood bigger, so I will not play any reserves for resources here. And of course it's possible that Arne will go for a plunder, and then I can't go for a movie and the Hollywood, but at least then I will be able to avoid famine. And Arne has had an impact that is fine for him to see it, so the resources and food and what he is getting out of that for himself might not be enough to justify skipping the impact that he has in hand. I sadly don't remember exactly which one, so I was hoping that I don't get hit by a blunder. However, funestus has an armed intervention in hand, and I thought that likely that will be the best option for his politics phase, as these impacts weren't as great. So yeah, I built a theater. I already am at 20 culture production, which already is by far the most culture income. Then I will take the modern infantry, develop it so that I score Nobel Prize this turn, also scoring culture with the Colosseum, and then I, with my last civil action, will already play the reserves resources to have more civil actions at the next turn. And now something interesting happens. Genghisip offers this loss of sovereignty to funestus, which at the first moment I was thinking, what? What is happening? Genghisip will now produce extra 2 culture, funestus will lose 2 culture. So maybe you can pause a moment and think about what has just happened here. Why is this pact accepted? And the reason that this pact is accepted is of course that it cancelled another pact, in this case the military alliance between Arne and Genghisip. So now we can actually, at this point, we can still see Arne winning the war against funestus, but now the other pact will be cancelled, and out of the sudden Arne is losing against funestus, so Genghisip is interfering in the war between Arne and funestus. But I think it makes sense for Genghisip, because he's now just getting some additional culture income, while one of his opponents gets a bit of less culture income, and at the moment Arne has more culture than funestus. Funestus has the better impact preparation, but maybe both of those opponents, especially if Arne wins the war, Arne has of course probably an advantage now that funestus wins the war, maybe he has a slight advantage, but if the war, for example, would resolve neutrally, then I guess both of them would be at a similarly strong position. Arne having more culture, funestus being a bit better prepared for impacts. So it's at least relatively close, and with that, for Genghisip, it's not really that relevant which player wins the war, and maybe he did even do some calculations, maybe he did even come to the conclusion that it's better for him if funestus wins the war, but even if it's just neutral for him, he's now gaining some culture income, and yeah, that's just better for him, so he decides to play this pact, and that really, of course, has quite an effect on the game. Arne now out of the sudden loses the war instead of winning it. Genghisip will go for the satellites, can finish the internet for 18 points, so a somewhat solid internet, not too big. He then has to destroy a mine to fix his uprising issues, and at least that leaves him somewhat badly prepared for some impacts. My impact of industry is coming. There could be impact of happiness. There could be something like, I guess also, I mean, his impact of balance already wouldn't have been that great, so that at least might cost him for some impacts. Now it's Arne's turn. He will now lose 6 culture to funestus, so that's of course quite unfortunate for him. The impact of variety is revealed, 16 for Genghisip, 18 for Arne, so quite a nice one for him, but also for funestus, sadly not that great for me. I only get 12 out of that impact. Arne will then increase his population, build another professional sports, that will be nice for a bunch of impacts. Also the impact of architecture that I still have in hand. He dispenses the unit of rifleman, builds another tank, get a bit stronger, get +1 for a potential impact of competition, and then he takes the United Nations. Would have funestus been able to do something with it? No, probably not. Unless, of course, he gets additional resources out of an aggression, something that Arne doesn't know, so that denial could have been significant. I also was happy to see that Arne didn't go for a blunder against me. However, as somewhat expected, funestus will go for that armed intervention against me, so stealing 7 culture. So, of course, another not so great impact at aggression. I was a bit worried about that, but my last turn will now actually also be quite strong. So let's see how the situation will look after my turn. Funestus will go for Nobel Prize, maximizes for impacts. Impact of agriculture could be coming, impact of balance, maybe impact of harmony is a bit better now as well. So he's preparing for a bunch of impacts, plays the military build-up, and ends his turn. Now it's my turn. The impact of architecture is good enough so that I want to play it. Could get punished maybe by some impacts being revealed too early, but I think it's a risk that I have to take. It's indeed an impact that I would have improved by a little bit, the impact of population. Sadly, it's also another impact that is not too great for me, at least against Arne and funestus. At least it's giving me some points against Genghisip, but at this point I felt catching up to Genghisip could be a bit challenging to do, especially because he is also the second best in culture production for the impact of culture. And yeah, this turn, I guess, is relatively straightforward. I increase my population with the ocean liner service, play the reserves for resources, build a movie, going up to 24 culture income, and then I can finish the Hollywood for 42 culture. So I think especially for a 4-player game, that's quite a nice Hollywood, and I was happy that I managed to pull this off. The question is it big enough to bring me back into the game, and how far can it potentially take me? Sadly, I lose 4 culture to famine, and then, before the final impacts, we can see that I am actually now at the second most culture, with having that big culture income, the big Hollywood. I am now at 173, and 9 culture before funestus, who has potentially some strong impacts, like balance. Science is at least already out, but his industry is also quite solid, so he could catch up in some impacts. Arne, for him it might be difficult to overcome the culture gap. Him now losing this war was just quite a big setback, and Genghisip has still quite a big lead, so catching up to him would be quite challenging. The first impact is my impact of architecture, giving me some points against Genghisip and also against funestus and Arne. Arne being able to catch up a little bit to funestus. Then there's my impact of culture, so that's quite strong for me. With that, I have now quite a solid lead before funestus and Arne. Funestus also getting a bit of a lead against Arne, while Genghisip, sadly, I am not able to catch up too much on. Impact of harmony is revealed. That was one of the impacts that I think I've seen with Flaming, I think in Arne's hand, who gets now plus 20 out of it. Only Genghisip is a bit worse than a lot of the other players. Then we have the impact of industry, also one of my impacts, best for funestus, but I gain 5 points in Genghisip, but funestus is gaining 1 point on me. So at this point I'm actually 16 points behind Genghisip, so I felt that, who knows, maybe there could actually be something possible. However, the next impact sadly isn't a great one for me, and after that I was immediately already a lot more worried about losing my second place here instead of finishing first, because the impact of agriculture only gives me 2 points. That's of course one of the downsides of the ocean liner, that often you will end up having not the greatest impact of agriculture. And funestus, I mean, it was somewhat obvious, he really put a lot of effort into getting a lot of food income, so he is now able to catch up 15 points, and there will be some impacts that could allow him to, or there are some impacts that could be the last one that would allow him to overtake me. So now I was quite a bit worried that I might lose my second place with the last impact. And the last impact is the impact of happiness. So with that, I won't be overtaken. I even catch up some points again to Genghisip, meaning that I actually only finished 10 points behind him, which I was a bit surprised to see, because during the game I felt like, nah, there's no chance that I will catch up to Genghisip without having done very concrete calculations, because my turns were somewhat straightforward. If there are a lot of nuances and I can play a lot around different impacts, I sometimes will do some calculations, but I mean, I just needed to maximize my Hollywood at the last turn, and also kinda at the second last turn, so there was not a lot of freedom to play around a lot of impacts, so I didn't do some deep calculations, and yeah, but it was actually not, I was not that far away. If, for example, the impact of science or something wouldn't have happened, it could have been even possible to win this game, but yeah, I had now already some favorable impacts in the impact evaluation at the end, so I already catched up, and maybe it would have been too much to even win this game, but I was at the end quite happy about it. Second place, that almost would have been taken away by funestus. Yeah, because after getting hit by the rebellion at the beginning of H2, I really felt like, that's just such a big setback. But yeah, the position was still playable or somewhat solid even after the rebellion, and I then yeah, played towards the big Hollywood. I managed to not get hit by a war, which I think might have been somewhat close, especially with missing out an Air Force. It was even a bit more challenging maybe to threaten enough strength, but that was maybe one weakness in funestus civilization. Just swordsmen and knights with classic army is often just not enough, even with having the Air Forces. With the Air Force, it's a lot more playable, but even with them, it's oftentimes not enough to make you completely safe if you don't have a support from somewhere else. So in this situation, Arne then chose to go for 2 wars against funestus, but unfortunately for him, the second one ended up being unsuccessful for him. Maybe even with winning the war, I mean, it would have been quite a big swing. I think a swing of. No, I don't want to do math here. But no, I mean, it's a 3 strength difference, but then also the +5 culture. maybe Funestus could have still finished before Arne, but it would have been definitely a lot closer, and maybe also some other things potentially might have changed. And yeah, so with that was the first game that we have taken a look at from my international championship season, but it's actually the third one that already finished. So we can now maybe take a look at the standings after 3 games finished and see how things are looking after the first few games. And as you can see, there have been now quite some games already finished. And Genghisip not only was able to win the 4-player game that we just saw on the video, but also actually 2 more 4-player games and had a very strong start, being already at 20 points. So he will be the player to catch, but 20 points likely also won't be enough to win the league. So that isn't decided yet, but Genghisip definitely has a head start right now. Ipogi also having a solid amount of points scored out of the 4 games. Arne with 8 points as well. Grotz maybe also with a solid position because he has only 3 games finished and 7 points. My start hasn't been the greatest, but at least I had 2 second places in a 4-player game as well as 1 loss. So I'm at 6 points, not that much, and at this point I certainly have to be rather I have to think about not getting relegated instead of maybe hoping to still win. Maybe at least scoring a bronze medal is certainly not out of reach. And with a lot of wins, I can also still win the league. But yeah, not the greatest start. And I really should now start to collect some points in order to hopefully not get relegated, as I, of course, want to stay in the league now for some seasons again, after finally having made it back. And MWI and Funestus both maybe having the worst start, especially MWI with already having 4 games finished, but still 3 games even to play for him. So he also can definitely still make a comeback and score a lot of points. Alright, with that we are finished with this video. I hope you are excited to see 1 or 2 more games of the season. And then at some point there will also be the first games of the World Championship finished, which we then will take a look at as well. Alright, then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.